It was one of those golden summer afternoons that baseball fans live for, the kind of day when the sun glints off the bleachers, the air hums with excitement, and even the smell of popcorn feels electric. The Phillies were playing at home, and the stands were a sea of red and white, waving banners and foam fingers, pulsing with anticipation. Among the thousands of fans in the crowd sat a father and his young son, both wearing matching jerseys and worn-in baseball caps. It was the boy's first live game, something he had dreamed about for months. He had watched every Phillies highlight, memorized every player's stats, and even practiced catching imaginary home runs in the backyard. For him, this wasn't just another weekend outing. It was a day he would remember forever. The father, a quiet and patient man, had worked double shifts to afford these tickets. They weren't front-row seats, but they were good enough to see the players clearly, good enough to feel the energy of the field. He smiled as his son clutched his glove, bouncing with nervous excitement. The boy's eyes were wide, scanning every batter, every fly ball, as if hoping one would finally head his way. The innings rolled by, the crowd roaring with every close call, every crack of the bat that sent the ball soaring toward the sky. And then, it happened. That once-in-a-lifetime moment that every fan secretly dreams of. A sharp hit sent the ball arcing high, spinning through the air like a comet, its white leather glinting in the afternoon light. The crowd gasped, tracking it as it descended, and it was coming straight toward them. Time seemed to slow as the boy's heart pounded in his chest. His father urged him to get ready, his hands steadying the glove. The ball dropped, spinning down with a perfect curve, and the boy caught it cleanly, right in the pocket of his glove. The crowd around them erupted in cheers, clapping and shouting as the boy held it up in disbelief. His smile stretched ear to ear, the kind of pure joy that only happens when a dream comes true. Nearby, phones were out, cameras clicking, fans congratulating the young catcher. It was a small, beautiful moment of connection. A little boy, a proud dad, and a baseball that would forever mark the day they shared. But in the rows behind them, someone else was watching with a very different expression. She was in her late 40s, wearing oversized sunglasses, a Phillies visor tilted just so, and a permanent look of disapproval etched across her face. She had been loud all game, complaining about the crowd, the heat, the noise, and the people not watching where they were throwing peanuts. The fans around her had already labeled her in whispers, a Karen in the wild. When she saw the boy clutching the ball, her lips pursed. She leaned forward, muttering something under her breath. And then, in an instant, she stood up, straightened her shirt, and marched down toward the boy and his father. The nearby fans noticed her movement, their chatter fading into curious silence. The woman's presence carried a strange authority, the kind that comes from years of scolding retail clerks and demanding to speak to the manager. The father turned, puzzled, as she approached. She began gesturing toward the boy, pointing at the ball, shaking her head. Though the crowd couldn't hear the words, her body language said enough. She wasn't congratulating him. She was arguing that a few people started recording, phones rising like periscopes among the seats. The woman seemed unfazed by the growing audience. She reached out, gesturing again toward the ball, her tone escalating. The father's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. The boy's smile faltered, clutching the ball tighter against his chest. And then, shockingly, she reached forward and took it. Gasps rippled through the stands like a wave. The boy froze, his glove suddenly empty, his eyes wide in stunned silence. The woman held the ball triumphantly, turning toward her friends seated nearby, who clapped as if something noble had just been done. The fans around them erupted, some shouting, some booing, some recording with shaking hands. The father stood, clearly furious but trying to stay composed for his son's sake. The woman, meanwhile, waved dismissively, holding the ball aloft as though she had won it fair and square. The surrounding seats buzzed with anger. Someone shouted that it was the boy's catch. Another yelled for security that a stadium attendant hurried over. Confusion etched across his face as several people began talking at once, pointing, explaining, accusing. The woman crossed her arms and insisted she was right, that the ball should have gone to a true fan, that she was collecting it for someone who deserved it more. Her words only fueled the crowd's rage. The boy sat there quietly, trying not to cry. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something meant to comfort him, Though his eyes burned with frustration, security arrived a few minutes later, and the scene turned even more chaotic. Phones recorded every moment, fans narrating their outrage in real time. Within minutes, clips began uploading to social media. Lady steals baseball from kid at Phillies game. And comments poured in faster than the game itself. The woman seemed oblivious to the attention she had drawn. Even as the boos grew louder, even as security spoke to her, she clutched the ball defiantly, shaking her head at anyone who tried to reason with her. She believed she was right. Utterly, completely right. And nothing could convince her otherwise. The father and son were eventually moved to another section by security, who promised to sort things out. The game continued, but the energy in that part of the stands was ruined. The boy sat quietly, his glove limp in his lap. The joy of his big day had been stolen, not by bad luck, but by someone's pride. Meanwhile, the woman kept the ball. She placed it in her bag, straightened her visor, and returned to her seat as though nothing had happened. But around her, people were still talking, still recording, still pointing. Her name wasn't known yet, but soon, very soon, it would be, because while she believed the moment would fade and be forgotten, the internet had other plans. The clip was already going viral before the seventh inning stretch. Millions of strangers were about to meet her, not as just another fan, but as something far more infamous. By the time the final pitch was thrown and the Phillies secured a narrow win, the real game was already happening online. Within minutes of the confrontation, multiple angles of the incident had flooded Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. The clips were short, shaky, and furious, the perfect storm for a viral explosion. A woman snatching a baseball from a kid's hands? It was the kind of everyday injustice the internet couldn't resist dissecting, mocking, and magnifying. The first video to go viral came from a teenager sitting 2 rows back. It had everything: the boy's excited catch, the triumphant cheer, the woman's approach, and the moment she snatched the ball. The title read simply, "Karen steals baseball from a kid at Phillies game, pouting face, pouting face, pouting faced." Within an hour, it had over 200,000 views. By morning, millions. Comment sections overflowed with outrage. People were tagging news outlets, players, and even the Phillies' official account. "This woman should be banned for life," one wrote. "How could anyone do that to a child?" another said. Screenshots of the woman's face circulated across Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and Instagram memes. Someone slowed down the footage frame by frame, zooming in on her expression as she snatched the ball. Others began creating parody TikToks, dramatic reenactments, fake interviews, even songs mocking the Phillies Karen. Meanwhile, the woman herself remained blissfully unaware, at least for a few hours. She had gone home satisfied, the ball displayed proudly on her mantle, convinced she had simply taught a lesson about fairness. In her mind, the boy didn't deserve it because he hadn't earned it, the player had. She believed she was doing something justifiable, maybe even noble. But the internet didn't share her version of events. By sunrise, local news stations were running the clip. National outlets followed soon after. The headline became unavoidable: "Woman steals home run ball from child at Phillies game." Reporters scoured ticket records, replay footage, and social media for clues about her identity. Neighbors began whispering. Her face was everywhere, frozen mid-grab, forever memorialized as the latest viral villain. Her name leaked online within a day. It wasn't hard. Someone matched her visor and sunglasses to photos on her Facebook profile, then confirmed it with a check-in she had posted from the stadium. Within hours, her personal details spread like wildfire. A phenomenon as cruel as it was inevitable. She woke up to hundreds of missed calls, a full inbox, and dozens of notifications. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. At first, she thought it was a glitch. Then she opened her social media apps and saw the storm. Her name trending, her photos turned into memes, her voice mocked by strangers across the country. Panic set in. She deleted her profiles, but it was too late. Screenshots had already been saved, reposted, and shared across every corner of the internet. Neighbors began avoiding her. Even the grocery store clerk gave her a nervous smile that felt different, too knowing. The father and son, meanwhile, had received an entirely different wave of attention. After the footage spread, the Phillies organization reached out privately. They invited them back for another game, offered signed memorabilia, and even arranged a meeting with one of the players. Photos of the boy holding a new ball, this time signed, filled social media feeds under the tag #JusticeForTheKid. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. On one side, a child smiling shyly, clutching his new baseball with a sense of redemption. On the other, a woman rapidly losing control of her life, spiraling under the weight of a digital mob. She tried to explain herself online before deleting everything. A short, defensive post claiming she had been misrepresented and that the media didn't show the whole story. But her words only fueled more anger. People mocked her tone, her justifications, her lack of remorse. Commenters called her entitled, soulless, and the ultimate Karen. Soon, parody accounts appeared pretending to be her, posting ridiculous statements like, "Kids these days need to learn about sharing," and "I caught that ball with my aura." Each post was met with laughter, shares, and more outrage. The story evolved beyond the real woman. She had become an online archetype, a symbol of everything people hated about entitlement. That AS days turned into a week. The story began taking on a life of its own. National talk shows debated it. Commentators discussed the rise of public shaming. A YouTuber with millions of subscribers released a dramatic retelling of the incident titled "The Phillies Karen Saga: When Entitlement Goes Too Far." It trended for days, complete with dramatic music, slow-motion replays, and captions reading, "All he wanted was a memory." Her family begged her to lay low, to stay off the internet, to let it pass. But the problem was, the internet didn't forget. Once a story like that caught fire, it burned everything it touched. The woman stopped going to work. Someone found her employer's website and began leaving fake reviews. Emails flooded the HR department demanding her firing. Strangers sent messages to her address, some mocking, some threatening. News vans parked near her home, waiting for a statement she would never give. She began peeking through the blinds, afraid to step outside. The ball still sat on her mantle, now tainted with shame. It had once felt like a trophy. Now it felt radioactive, a reminder of the single decision that had turned her into a national headline. Across town, the boy displayed his signed baseball proudly. His father smiled as they watched a replay of the newscast that called him the kid who captured America's heart. It should have been the end of the story, the happy resolution to a moment gone wrong. But the internet wasn't done yet. Somewhere deep in a Reddit thread, someone posted that the woman hadn't apologized, that she had, in fact, been seen back at another game, sitting smugly in the stands as though nothing had happened. Whether true or not, the rumor reignited the flames. People began organizing. They dug deeper, looking for every scrap of her life, every post, every possible scandal to attach to her name. And soon, one would emerge, something small, something trivial, but enough to bring the fury roaring back stronger than before. Because when the internet turns on someone, it never truly stops. And for the woman now known as the Phillies Karen, the real nightmare was only beginning. By the second week, the woman's world had shrunk to the size of her living room. Curtains drawn, phone silenced. Television turned low enough that she could hear if someone knocked on the door. Outside, the neighborhood still looked the same, quiet, manicured lawns, the soft hum of sprinklers, but it felt like the whole world had turned its back on her. Every time a car slowed in front of her house, her stomach twisted. Every knock, every package delivery sent her heart pounding. She had become that person, the one everyone whispered about. Her name was still trending online, though less than before. The internet's anger had shifted toward new targets, new controversies. But her life hadn't reset the way she expected. There was no normal waiting on the other side of the storm. Her job had quietly let her go, citing workplace reputation concerns. Her friends had stopped calling. Even her own sister had told her to just apologize, as if that could undo what had been done. In her mind, though, she still couldn't accept it. She wasn't evil, she told herself. She had just made a mistake, a small, impulsive act blown out of proportion. She convinced herself the boy would forget it soon, that everyone would move on. But the problem was, the internet had frozen her in time. The image of her snatching that ball, smug, defiant, unrepentant, had become who she was, at least to the world. For days she avoided going outside. But groceries don't buy themselves, and bills don't stop arriving. So one morning, she decided to go out, just once, to a small market a few blocks away. She wore a mask and a hat pulled low, hoping anonymity would protect her. But halfway through the store, she noticed the cashier whisper to another employee. Then someone's phone lifted discreetly, pretending to check messages while filming her. Her chest tightened by the time she left. The whispers were louder. She hurried back to her car, eyes down, gripping her keys as if the metal could anchor her to something real. Later that day, a new clip appeared online. Grainy, shaky footage captioned, "Phillies Karen spotted at grocery store." No remorse. It had barely a few thousand views, but that was enough to remind her this wasn't over. Meanwhile, the boy and his father were thriving in the spotlight. They had become minor local celebrities. The Phillies organization invited them to throw the first pitch at a future game. The boy beamed in every photo, his shy smile immortalized in headlines about sportsmanship and kindness. He didn't talk much about the incident anymore. To him, it was something that had happened, then passed. But his father couldn't help noticing the shadow it left behind. The moment his son learned that adults weren't always fair, that some people could take what wasn't theirs and walk away smiling. For the woman, though, time stretched on unevenly. Some days she felt anger again, convinced the world had treated her unfairly. Other days, guilt crept in, slow, heavy, suffocating. She'd find herself staring at the ball on her mantle, the smooth leather now dulled under the lamp. It no longer looked like a prize. It looked like evidence. Weeks later, she finally decided to do something about it. Not to redeem herself. She didn't believe that was possible, but because she couldn't stand the silence anymore. She wrapped the ball in tissue paper, placed it in a small box, and drove to the stadium. The parking lot was empty except for a few staff cars. She sat in her vehicle for nearly an hour before getting out, heart pounding, unsure what she'd even say if someone stopped her. She walked quietly to the service entrance and left the box at the door with a short handwritten note. To the boy who caught this fair and square, "I'm sorry. It was yours all along." No signature, no name, just a return she hoped someone would understand. Then she drove away, not looking back. That small act didn't erase what had happened. It didn't stop the memes, or the jokes, or the lingering glances from strangers. But in that moment, something inside her shifted, a quiet acknowledgement that even when the world paints you as the villain, you still have the power to choose what comes next. Months passed. The frenzy died completely. The internet, as it always did, found new stories to feed on, new villains, new Karens, new outrage. The woman's name faded from search results, buried under fresher scandals. Occasionally, her photo would resurface in top 10 Karen moments compilations, her face frozen mid-grab, but it no longer carried the same sting. It had become just another moment in the endless churn of digital judgment. The boy grew older. He still loved baseball, though he never forgot the lesson that came with that day. Not just about losing something unfairly, but about how quickly kindness could replace cruelty. The Phillies had kept the letter. When they received it, the team quietly gave it to his father, who decided to show it to his son only years later. By then, the paper had yellowed slightly, but the message still carried weight. The boy read it silently, then placed it back in the envelope. He didn't know the woman's name, didn't need to. In his mind, it was just a reminder that sometimes, people who do wrong can still find their way back to right. Even if no one's watching. As for the woman, she eventually sold the house and moved to another town. A smaller place, quieter, where no one recognized her. She volunteered at a local youth sports program, keeping to herself. She never mentioned her past, but sometimes, when a kid caught a ball and held it high with pride, she smiled in a way that hinted at understanding and regret. The story of the Phillies Karen faded into digital history, a cautionary tale buried under millions of others. But for those who remembered, it stood as a strange parable of modern life. How a single impulsive act, captured on camera, could spiral into a global spectacle. How the internet could destroy and resurrect reputations in equal measure. And how, beneath it all, real people, flawed, angry, proud, and human, were left to live with the aftermath. In the end, the boy kept the baseball on his shelf, beside the letter. The woman found peace in anonymity. And the world, always hungry for the next outrage, moved on, but not without leaving a lesson behind. That sometimes, the smallest acts of selfishness echo the loudest, and sometimes, even a simple game can show us who we really are.